Today's top headlines, including the now returned Texas House Democrats being made to have mandatory DPS escorts as punishment for breaking quorum. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston, Ronan O'Malley, who will give us the latest on the Russian-Ukraine summits.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. Plus, we'll also speak with Robert Pearlman, editor of collectSPACE, who will give us the latest on the political effort to relocate the Space Shuttle Discovery from Virginia to Texas.
And as Ernie, Frank, and I discuss the top headlines of the day, we want your thoughts, your questions, and concerns. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
All that and more right here on Hello Houston after the news from NPR and News 88.7.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Trump administration's now arranging a bilateral meeting between Russia and Ukraine, following meetings with leaders of each country in a span of 72 hours. On Fox News today, President Trump said he wants to end the war, but acknowledged Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Russian President Vladimir Putin are, quote, the ones who have to call the shots.
I think Putin is tired of it. I think they're all tired of it. But you never know. We're going to find out about President Putin in the next couple of weeks, that I can tell you. And we're going to see where it all goes. It's possible that he doesn't want to make a deal.
Ukraine and European allies want Putin to first commit to halt in fighting, but Trump's calling for a permanent peace deal. Ukraine wants security guarantees against a future Russian invasion should this war end. Trump says there will be some form of it, but echoed Putin's opposition to Ukraine's entry to NATO. A senior Hamas official has confirmed to NPR that it has accepted a ceasefire proposal for Gaza. The move comes as Israel is gearing up for a major military offensive into Gaza. NPR's Jackie Northam has more from Tel Aviv.
Hamas came under heavy pressure from Egypt and Qatar to accept a deal and said there would be rounds of negotiations if and when Israel accepts. The terms of the proposal are similar to one recently put forth by President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff. It included the redeployment of some Israeli troops and more humanitarian aid going into Gaza. Israel had previously agreed to it, but since then the government has been preparing for an offensive into Gaza City. An anonymous person in Israel familiar with the negotiations told NPR the government received Hamas's response from mediators and is studying it and would respond. Jackie Northam, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Home building activity in the United States picked up last month. NPR's Scott Horsley reports on the latest figures from the Commerce Department.
Builders broke ground on 5.2% more homes in July than they did the month before. Construction of single-family homes jumped nearly 3% last month. Building permits, which are considered a guide to future construction plans, offered a more mixed picture. Permits for single-family homes rose slightly last month, while permits for multifamily housing fell. A survey shows many home builders are still gloomy about the housing market, with elevated mortgage rates keeping a lot of would-be buyers on the sidelines. Home Depot says its sales picked up in the most recent quarter, but the home improvement chain's sales and profits still fell short of what analysts had expected. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
U.S. stocks are mixed this hour. The Nasdaq is down now 217 points, or more than 1%, at 21,413. The S&P's off 24, and the Dow is up 11. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. Officials with the Harris County District Attorney's Office say a steady decline in the county jail's population could plateau with the threat of potential funding cuts. News 88.7's Sarah Grunow has more.
County officials say that the jail population has significantly decreased since DA Sean Tier was elected, about 1,300 fewer inmates since January. Daniel Ramos, the county's budget director, says that the sheer number of trials held by the DA's office is significantly eating into an ongoing court case backlog.
So what I can confidently say is that for the first time in the 4 years that I've been here, there's light at the end of the tunnel as it relates to the jail and to outsourcing.
Harris County is also expected to spend about $4 million less on jail outsourcing operations next year. But that progress might level out as Harris County faces a projected $200 million budget deficit. I'm Sarah Grunow, News 88.7.
A Harris County Sheriff's deputy is recovering after being involved in a crash late last night. This happened at Little York Road near the East Tex Freeway feeder. KHOU reports that the deputy was traveling without lights or sirens when he was hit by another car that had turned right in front of him. Police say the deputy had the green light at the time of the crash. The driver and passenger in the other car were taken to the hospital as a precaution. The deputy suffered a serious cut on his arm. Checking sports, Houston takes on the Tigers in Detroit tonight at 5:40. The Astros barely hanging on to a 1.5-game lead over Seattle in the AL West. Your look at weather, a 40% chance of showers and thunderstorms this afternoon into the evening. It'll be 97 today, feeling like 107, and 80 degrees for tonight's low. Right now, it's partly cloudy, 83 degrees on the UH campus. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BetterHelp, committed to helping clients with issues ranging from relationship challenges and goal setting to grief and depression. Learn more at betterhelp.com/public. This is NPR.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Here we are.
Good morning. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Happy Tuesday.
Happy
It is
Tuesday.
Tuesday, August 19th.
2025.
2025. Today is, okay, I was going back to Tuesday. You know what's really interesting is we talked about back to school, but there are a lot of parents that are dropping off young college students in college.
Yes.
This is the first start of the college.
Yeah, I saw my friend Anthony Yanis, the chief meteorologist. My replacement.
We'll talk about that later. Yes.
Did you know I've been talking to him?
No, I love Anthony. His daughter, he had a whole little video on Facebook with the car getting packed and the doors shutting and the hugs and the goodbyes. And then he's driving and they're all driving. But she's going, I think, like to Texas Tech. And it's like a 9-hour drive.
It's going to be a long way. And also our own executive producer of Hello Houston, Jim Kovacic, is sending his daughter off. And so safe travels and Grandpa, and he has
talk about a family adjustment in a moment. Yesterday he had a granddaughter. Today he takes his daughter to school.
His youngest
Things
daughter.
are changing in that family.
Yes, but I know there are a lot of parents, including my sister, that is taking off their kids to college, and so we're thinking of all those parents dropping off kids in college.
Were you taken to college? I drove myself.
I did too.
Yeah. What about
I went
you?
to North Carolina.
My mom and dad drove me we went about a week early because I was going from New York to Chicago, and my mom's family was in Chicago. So went to Chicago, and then my dad went back to whatever my dad does. And my mom stayed with me, and we went out looking for an apartment because I didn't want to live in the dorms. I wanted my own apartment. So we looked around, we found it. And by the start of the first day of school, it happened for some reason be on September 1st. It was my birthday, and I woke up in my own apartment.
Wow.
That is
That was
cool.
the first day. So that started a whole new world for me that day.
Well, I was raised in Birmingham. I went to school in Lexington, Virginia. 10-hour drive. I'd never been to the school. I mean, we didn't have school visits 10 hours away back in the 70s. We looked at the college catalog and said, okay, this will probably work. And so I drove halfway there. We got to Knoxville. I did with a friend of mine that was going. And it's like, oh, my God, we're only halfway there? So it was either turn around and go home 5 hours or just keep going 5 hours. Either way, it was 5 more hours. So I thought, might as well go. And so I did. But I'll tell you, that drive was tough in those days. 10 hours in the car.
Right.
I picture you, Celeste, going like Eloise at the plaza, showing up with a cart full of luggage and in your little gloves and your little hat. How was your
for all the heels?
Yeah, no, mine was different because my sister lived in North Carolina, and so I wanted to be in that area. So I went by myself, and I drove my Camry and packed it up.
Well, tell us what's going on our show today.
But we have a lot going on. Coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to talk with Ronan O'Malley of the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston about Russia-Ukraine summits. But first,
before we get, I just want to say about that, too. You've heard a lot. There's been a lot of talk about these summits. We wanted to take a slightly different point of view. We're in such a visual age, how these stories are being told visually. And so that'll launch us into the conversation. We want to hear your thoughts on it because from a red carpet rollout to a black suit, people are talking about what they're seeing almost as much, if not more so, than what they're hearing. So give us a call and let us know what you think about that when we get to that topic. 713-440-8870. You can also watch us on YouTube. I mentioned that because there's a chat group that goes on there and folks discuss all of that there.
And a couple of really good nonprofits on today, too, to talk about with bicycles and helping people with disabilities. So that's going to be a nice conversation. So let's get going. Celeste.
The Democrats return to Austin, but the drama continues. After a 2-week walkout, breaking quorum, and bringing the State House to a standstill, part of their punishment, they won't be alone. They will now have DPS escorts. Upon their return on Monday to the Texas House, the Democrats who broke quorum and left the state will now only be able to leave the Texas legislature chambers with Texas law enforcement in tow. Yesterday, House Speaker Dustin Burrows told the chamber members who, quote, have not been present until today would only be granted permission to leave after agreeing to be released into the custody of a designated Texas Department of Public Safety officer. One Texas Democratic legislator chose not to sign out. State Representative Nicole Collier took to Instagram writing, in part, "My constituents sent me to Austin to protect their voices and rights. I refuse to sign away my dignity as a duly elected representative just so Republicans can control my movements and monitor me with police escorts. When I press that button to vote, I know these maps will harm my constituents. I won't just go along quietly with their intimidation and their discrimination." And she's stayed put, spending the night in the chamber and sleeping there. There's video all over Instagram where you can see her. Representative Jean Wu and Vince Perez, also Democrats, stayed with her as well. And at this moment, they are still there. Now is the time to join the conversation. What do you think? Is this the best use of our law enforcement officers, or did the Democrats prove they could not be trusted to return to their work in Austin come Wednesday? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Fascinating story, and it just keeps evolving. I'm taken with this story because of the idea that they can't leave. They all had to sign themselves out, and Gene Wu has a picture. He did sign himself out with an escort, but then opted to stay behind. But is that right? Are they being treated like children, or did their behavior say, listen, we've got work to do here, and you've shown you can't be trusted to stay in the state?
We talk about optics, and I think that this is a move by Republican legislators to say, optics-wise, we're watching you. We have to send a message that we are punishing you for breaking quorum. And so to me, this is very much there is substance there, but not as much as optics.
Well, and the flip side of it is, because I always like to go flip side, is the fact that, is this the best use of Department of Public Safety employees? Are law enforcement agents monitoring our elected officials, or should they be working on other things where we have issues and crises in the state?
Well, that's a good question.
And what do you think,
Well,
Frank?
It's very authoritarian. It's just like, we're gonna watch what you're doing, and we're gonna have our eyes on you, and we're gonna make sure that you do what we want you to do. We are taking away your right to leave the state. And how can you suppress that right in America? I know you don't want me to leave. I know you want me to stay here and vote, even though you're going to diminish my vote, and my vote's not going to have any power. But just because you don't like the fact that we left the state and broke quorum, now you have the right to say, we're going to assign someone, a police officer, to your right alongside you and not let you go anywhere? That we don't want you to go?
I guess part of it is the fact that the Speaker of the House has the right to lock the chamber, to keep you inside once it's called, once it's convened. So the idea being, okay, we, what's the word I want to use? We have the ability to do this, but we're going to let you actually leave and go back home and all that stuff because we're not going to be working until Wednesday morning. But some of you have proven that if I let you go, I don't know where you're going to go. So it's just kind of fascinating to me.
We have a comment, I think, from Greg in Spring. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just confused about this whole issue. I don't understand how somebody can control your every movement like this. Since the Republicans want everything their way, and they don't seem to be willing to compromise, I think it's time for the Democrats to explore the possibility of seceding. In other words, the major metropolitan areas becoming their own state. It's time. It's time for this.
So you're not just talking about the state of Texas seceding. We're going to have a split in the state. So you could be from East Texas or West Texas. And I wonder how that split would even work.
I don't know, because a lot of our money comes from the red parts of the state with all the oil wells and the windmills and the farming. Yeah. So, we're nice and blue here in the city, but, we don't have oil wells in our backyard.
Let me pull you back to the topic for a bit and say, how would you handle the situation? You're now, Greg, Speaker of the House from Spring. You have a half of your house that left and stopped all the work and didn't allow you to finish what you were there for. You being in the party that stayed behind, you are losing out time and not being able to work and have to be available. What would you recommend that the Speaker of the House do?
Compromise from the very beginning.
Oh, I like that,
This is not just a Republican state. There are over 4 million Democrats in this state, more Democrats than a lot of states around the country. And they are being thrown away. I mean, this is just pure power grab. So if that's what they want, that's fine.
Well, Greg, let me ask you this. Why do we have to be a Republican or a Democrat? Why can I believe that we shouldn't put the 10 Commandments on the school wall, but I also believe in tighter border security? What's wrong with voting for what we believe to be the best person or the best policy without being cornered into a red or a blue corner?
And that's worked for years and years.
Years,
and years.
Thank you. Yes.
But now it is no longer the way they're doing it. This could have all been avoided had they compromised where we belong. We belong in the middle like we have for years. There's no more middle. And unfortunately, they're now realizing that they can't hang on to power, so they're changing the rules so that few 10% on the fringe can control all the rest of us. And if that's what they want, let's give them what they want. Let's just take the large metropolitan areas with all the money, all the GDP, everything that's paying for all the red counties out there. If that's what they want, let's give it to them. Let's just become East Texas and then West Texas, et cetera.
Greg, thank you very much. Thank you for those comments and the thought to give us something to chew on and think about.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Greg brings up an interesting conversation. I think that, and when we're looking at this, a lot of voters are looking at our state from a national perspective, and we are really setting a tone for a larger conversation, which is looking at midterm redistricting. We're looking at it in California. We're looking at what happens next from a state level when it's all trickling in and you're having major divisions. Where do we go from here? That is, I think, one of those big questions that continues to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did have a comment that came in from Denise on our YouTube that said, I've heard from previous guests on your show that breaking quorum as a legislative tool is a strategy protected by the Texas Constitution. If so, how can laws punishing quorum breakers be legal? Quorum break, as I understand it, is an available tool to be used. The sanctioning of it and the agreement of it, if you listen to the governor talk about it, he had an interesting analogy he used that I don't know that I go along with. You are free to drive as fast as you want on our highways because they're there and enable it, but that doesn't mean it's legal to do it. I don't think that actually works in this position, but the deal is that they do have the right to make sure that they do have the right to lock the chamber. They do have a right to make sure that your elected officials who, once you are in there, do the work you're doing. So I think it's more about keeping an eye on them than it is punishing them. I mean, we know it's punishing them for breaking quorum, but it is, I think they're two different things coming together in this moment. And
why do they have the right to lock the chamber?
Because people would leave and not stay. So they have to have it. But that goes to say the quorum break is understood if they have ways to usurp it.
Give me another example where people get locked into their business.
It really does sound very archaic.
I mean, we used to have church retreats where we would do a lock-in.
Yes,
and you stay
that's
all
right.
night and sing songs.
Yeah, this is very
I don't get
interesting.
this idea of we're mad that you're going to maybe leave, and so we're going to lock this chamber. Okay, I'm going to be nice and just give you an escort.
I'm going to be nice and say 713-440-8870 is the number if you want to chime in like Sissy is doing right now from Hobby. Sissy, what's on your mind?
Well, it is pretty frustrating what the whole city is going through in regard and how it's going to affect Texas. I think it's wrong for the president to demand of our governor, if you want something from me at the federal end, you need to give me these 5 votes. This is a very fascist behavior, telling a state that they have to deliver 5 extra votes so he can get what he wants. That is not taking care of your citizenry. That is not taking care of the country, especially as an example.
Do you think it will backfire on him?
It's really infuriating.
Yeah.
I agree. Sissy, do you think this could backfire on the Republicans?
The way it might backfire is if they woke up and stopped sitting on their hands or putting their heads in the ground like an ostrich and pretending nothing is going to happen because they've done this. It's very un-American.
Yeah, Sissy, thank you for that.
It doesn't follow the Constitution, and it doesn't follow our Bill of Rights.
Yeah. Sissy, thank you for that. One of the concerns is that in this redistricting, what they're going to do is they're going to dissolve or what's the word? Once again, I can't think of words today.
Redistricting?
When the redistricting will bring down the number of true Republicans in all the districts that it could backfire. They may not have the move to
go to
it.
dummy mandering is what they call it.
Yeah, so it could backfire if they do too many. Our governor was talking about going on to 10 seats then. If five doesn't work, he'll do 10, which I have a problem with that on a different level.
You're listening to Hello Houston, and we are speaking about how yesterday House Speaker Dustin Burrows told the chamber members who, quote, have not been present until today would only be granted permission to leave after agreeing to be released into the custody of a designated Texas Department of Public Safety officer. One Texas Democratic legislator chose not to sign out, and that was State Representative Nicole Collier. Here is what she had to say.
I've had enough. I'm tired of it. There's so many things that this government does, and I have a right to challenge our government, and I have a right to resist.
And again, that was State Representative Nicole Collier, one of the Democratic legislators who chose not to sign out and stay and spend the night last night in Austin in the Capitol. And again, you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. We have a call on the line.
It's Alan from Texas City. Alan, what's on your mind?
I just wanted to say that this is political theater to bring this gerrymandering to the forefront for the masses to see it. Otherwise, most people wouldn't pay attention to it. I remember when Barbara Jordan led a group of Democrats out of the state. They know eventually they're going to have to come back. Eventually the gerrymandering is going to pass, but they want to make sure the masses are aware of what's going on with the Republicans now.
Alan, thank you for that. And he brings up a good point, too, the whole fact that what a lot of the Democrats did say was, yes, they broke quorum, but they brought national attention to the situation, and that helped then with California and possibly New York and Illinois getting involved in what's going on. Let's grab one more call. We're going to go to Mark from Upper Kirby. Mark, what's on your mind?
I've been listening to your discussion, and as always, it's very intelligent and well presented. But I think the point that is kind of being missed here is if without Donald Trump's interference with trying to redistrict Texas to win Republican seats, none of this would have been happening.
Mark, we haven't missed that point at all. We haven't missed that point at all.
Yeah, but as far as the if you're a Republican or a Democrat and you're in the state legislature, you know what your responsibilities are. So don't be surprised if you decide not to participate in a quorum that you're locked in there. You know that before you get involved in this. But I appreciate and the Democrats that have decided to rebuke what is happening to this, but it's another thing that is being so divisive in this country.
Mark, thank you for your comments, and we appreciate hearing. We appreciate hearing from all of you. If you have a thought, an opinion, give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with Ronan O'Malley, the Chief Program Officer for the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston, about the Russian and Ukraine summits. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Federal funding for public media has been cut. In response, we're creating Houston Public Media's Resiliency Fund. Donations made toward the fund will directly counter the loss of the $2.2 million in federal funds that were cut annually and strengthen our station's foundation to provide our services into the future. Contributing to this fund is easy and quick and makes all the difference to our station. Help build the Resiliency Fund now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Day mornings at 9 here on News 88.7.
If you're feeling frustrated and unsure of what to do right now, start here.
Support Houston Public Media's Resiliency Fund. Your support will bridge the $2.2 million annual gap left from federal funding cuts.
Giving to our Resiliency Fund means you're protecting the truth. You're making sure people stay informed.
You can do something. Give to the Resiliency Fund at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Or call 888-909-0887.
Things are changing in Europe. Trump has spooked the Europeans into thinking more seriously about their defense. And the idea of a threat from Russia that goes beyond Ukraine is starting to seep into the European psyche.
I'm Rachel Abrams. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
You can hear the Daily coming up tonight at 7 o'clock.
Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer. Support comes from Houston Theater Week, a citywide celebration of live performances. Participating organizations include theater, dance, and music presenters. Returning August 18th through 24th. Tickets at HoustonTheaterWeek.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
And Frank Billingsley.
I'm aware of the weather, by the way. It was a rough morning for a lot of folks. It still is down. And then yesterday afternoon, it was a rough afternoon.
I was going to cook outside, and then all of a sudden, boom. So how's it going to look for the rest of the
Well,
next
I think
few
now
days?
that this line moved through this morning, some people are still getting it down to the southwest of us, but it sort of balances things out now, so should stabilize us. So we should have a fairly quiet afternoon.
And what about the coolness?
The coolness.
It was 82 degrees just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, well, the sun's back out. So
Okay, we tried.
Sorry about
Okay, 2 milestones in the saga. That is the Russian-Ukrainian war, both with Donald Trump at the center of the swirl. On Friday, the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska, and yesterday, on Monday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy came to the White House flanked by 7 European leaders. And as much as the words and discussion are important, so too are the images, gestures, and protocols seen, watched, and beamed across the globe. In a world of never-ending media coverage, the picture is not only worth 1,000 words, but it broadcasts policies, positions, insights, and strength. From the red carpet to a black suit. What can we learn about the peace process simply from the images we're seeing? Joining us to discuss this and more surrounding the search for a resolution is Ronan O'Malley, Chief Program Officer at the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. Welcome to the program, Ronan.
Ernie and all of you, it's great to be back, and congratulations on the new show and the new studio. All looks wonderful.
Before you say anything, I want to let people know if you want to join the conversation and chat with us, give us a call or text 713-440-8870. Ronan, take it away.
Sure. Maybe before getting to maybe 2 notable symbols from the last few days, I would mention what's maybe getting the most play back in Russia, where most or all, I should say, of the media is state controlled, or at least influenced and dominated, is the fact that this happened at all in the United States. So this is the first time an American president has hosted Putin since 2007, when Putin invaded Georgia in 2008, and he still holds territory in Georgia. Obviously, it was near the end of his term. George Bush would not host him again after that. There are big sanctions. 2014, Putin annexes takes over Crimea, foments a civil war in the east of Ukraine. During Obama's time, and even during Trump's first term, he was never hosted in the United States. So this is.
Well, let me ask you this: was there anything to it being in Alaska as opposed to Washington?
That I think is probably some of it. He didn't want to give it the degree of formality of a full, state, affair being hosted in the White House, and the same way you would fet, say, the European leaders that have come, this week. Mm-hmm. But I think some of it, Trump himself liked to play up, and Putin as well, this idea of this was once Russian territory. There's still Russian churches in some of the small villages of Alaska. It's kind of halfway between the 2 capitals.
Yeah, it felt like 2 old men who didn't want to travel that far. Like, I'll meet you in Alaska,
Well, when you talk about the image of Putin on U.S. soil shaking hands with the U.S. president, globally, what does that image say?
I think in a lot of ways it's just what Putin wanted. It's the same way, if you remember the first term for Kim, the head of the third leader of this generational rule in North Korea. Just to have a summit with the American president, the most powerful person in the world, is a coup. That's a sign that you're being granted that prestige, that access. You're on the same stage with them. So I think from Putin's perspective, it was a big coup. The other thing was a bit unique was typically, if a host country hosts something like this at the diplomatic level, the host president or the host prime minister will give the first remarks afterwards and talk first. You might have noticed that was flipped, that Putin gave the first remarks. It wasn't definitively made clear why that happened. The other thing was there had been said in advance that both Putin and Trump would give remarks and talk to the media and have a kind of a brief press conference afterwards, which in essence didn't really happen. And I think, maybe if you want to look at symbols from Alaska, maybe one of the most important symbols I find was not what was happening there on the red carpet or what you saw in their kind of, highlight moments on TV. It's Sergei Lavrov, who's the foreign minister for 21 years now, extremely smart, obviously very seasoned, capable diplomat. This was absolutely not a mistake. But when he arrives at the summit, he's seen walking into the buildings, the hotel, wearing a sweatshirt underneath that says CCP. This is the USSR Union. Basically.
Yeah.
And in some ways, obviously that's trolling the Ukrainians, that's trolling Zelenskyy, perhaps somewhat trolling Trump, because this is all about Putin's idea of reconstituting the greater Russia, Nova Russia.
I want to go back to that sweatshirt in a minute, but one more thing. Both the White House and the Kremlin sent out photos of behind-the-scenes moments. One had Putin looking very much in charge of Trump, one with Trump the finger into Putin, looking like they're in charge, how they're playing these to give the image they want. But how do you find out in today's day and age where the reality lies in what the true conversation, what the true interaction was?
I think that's a lot of people are saying that's what's the difficulty, especially about what happened. It was a very brief 3 hours together, a limited number of people in the room. Remarks weren't really given about what was or was not discussed. As far as what we know, it's good that they spoke with each other, but in terms of there's no points made, Putin will finally give up on this point or that point, and we can move from there. But basically, I think the difficulty is, in a lot of ways, this was the benefit is that yes, they met and maybe you're starting a process. But Trump, if you might remember, it said, we will come to some kind of agreement. We will have a ceasefire, and if not, if we don't get at least some degree of kind of reciprocity from Putin from this summit, we're going to extract heavy measures, whether it be extreme sanctions or something beyond that.
Kind of an icebreaker.
You mentioned the sweatshirt, and Celeste and I were talking about this, about how fashion also says what's going on. Granted, a sweatshirt you may not call fashion, but what he's wearing, the CCP thing on there saying Soviet Union, you were talking about also with First Lady fashions too, and how they continue
very
to do this.
often. Yes. I mean, I actually think there was meaning behind the sweatshirt.
Oh,
everything is
yeah.
down to the T, to the color, the member. I mean, even the person and the designer who makes for and oftentimes with fashion. But, it's one of those things where when we're looking at this, Ronan, you are, the part of a major global organization right here in Houston. You see these type of dynamics. Was there something that stood out to you specifically as somebody who works with European leaders continuously?
I suppose, like I say, in all honesty, obviously for the sake of the Ukrainian people and the Russian people, the vast majority of whom they might like Putin, they might have voted for him, but they're suffering incredibly. The Ukrainians, neither side releases data for understandable reasons, but the Ukrainian military losses are estimated to be 120,000 killed already, probably another 250,000 wounded, and at least probably 50 and 20,000 civilians killed. And you'll notice Putin kept the barrage of missiles attacking Ukrainian cities, did not stop. Even when the Europeans were arriving at the White House yesterday, it kept going. So I think it's hopeful that there was some talk and some dialogue, but Putin has said absolutely nothing in regards to what he is willing to concede and come off of his main points. And I think that's the great difficulty of it.
We're speaking with Ronan O'Malley of the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. If you'd like to join the conversation, give us a call, 713-440-8870. You can also text us at that number. If you look at this today and you looked at it last Wednesday, before either summit, did anything really change?
I think if there were changes, it's more of what happened back here back in the White House in D.C. When Zelenskyy, this time, unlike when he met in February, had the support, kind of the needed support of having the Prime Minister of England, the President of France, the Chancellor of Germany, the Secretary General of NATO, all there to support him come together to work and discuss with Trump and his cabinet. And there, I suppose, maybe you've seen more movement or more flexibility that say, Putin has always said, absolutely, we will not have any sort of Western militarized force, even defensive force in Ukraine. That is why he started, one of the reasons he gives for starting the war in the first place. But you see some of the Europeans who do not like the idea of sending French troops on the ground in Ukraine, or German troops or British troops, but perhaps moving towards that more so. Trump himself he hasn't definitively said one way or the other, but for a long time he said we will never have American troops on the ground. But you might remember just yesterday when he was asked that question, he kind of
hesitated.
Hesitated. And is that for negotiating reasons, or is that he's realizing without that we're never going to get any agreement?
Let's move to the White House. We were on Fashion Watch with Zelenskyy. What would he wear? And it came out a black suit. No one really wore blue and gold, which would have been a nice gesture. So what do you make of what was being sent visually from the White House meeting?
Especially in regards to Zelenskyy's attire, I think one thing to preface it would be to make people realize what happened in February, that was not, he did not dress in kind of militaristic casual attire as an affront to Bush or to Trump or Obama or anyone he's met over the years. Since the full-scale invasion in 2022, he has not worn a suit. He has not worn kind of a traditional Western European style suit, not even for one meeting, whether it's been with Macron or with Starmer or with Merz, or say even with King Charles or even with the Pope. So that has been just, he is not like a dictator wearing a jump, doesied up kind of, uniform, with half a side of full of medals here and there.
Right.
His attire are not official uniforms. They're just militaristic to show solidarity with the Russian soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers out there fighting and dying. And he just has said, this is a small way of me showing to the country that until this war is over, I am not going back to a peacetime mentality. So I think that's important to remember that the attire he wore in February to the White House is what he's wore all over the world, with meeting comparable leaders all over the world. What he wore on Monday was, I suppose, fancier, more dolled up. But if you see the outfits, I don't know exactly how to describe it. It was nicer looking or sharper looking, but it wasn't, again, say a full traditional suit. It wasn't with a typical tie. It was what he wore to Pope Francis's funeral. So I think he realized the optics that he had to change that. It was something he was able to kind of turn into a joke and turn back on the kind of reporter who had pestered him about it in February. He turned it back on him and said, "Hey, I'm the one looking better than you now." When they spoke yesterday.
Was funny.
Yes.
Now, for Europe's leaders that were gathering there at the White House during this meeting, it seems to be, obviously, there was a lot of optics, but there was also some substance there in regards to, do you think this was a chance to undo any ground that Russia's President Putin may have gained over Trump, or gained over essentially his positioning in Alaska? Do you think that they were able to accomplish what, from a substance standpoint, what they were trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I think so, definitely, because that was kind of like you're referring to. That was their greatest concern, is coming for really Trump's first term, and in recent months and after Friday, we've heard what the Ukrainians would have to give up to get a peace deal, but we've never heard Putin once give up any real concession. And I think this was the idea of solidarity and the Europeans saying and showing to the United States, we're all here together. And I think more importantly, showing to Putin, like, we realize the certainty of NATO and the European and American defensive alliance of the last 80 plus years may not be the same or exist from here on out, but the Europeans are starting to stand up. They're finally increasing their defense spending. They're finally getting more organized, but they're still far, far beyond the force that would be necessary to defend Ukraine in the same way the United States can, or even support a defense.
So earlier I asked you about the image of Putin and Trump shaking hands, how that played. How does that image of those 7 leaders and Zelenskyy standing with Trump in the White House, that image play? And what's that saying? We are all one? And then how does that play in with the Russian-U.S. negotiation?
Yeah, I think it was a godsend for Zelenskyy. He knew that he needed it. And I think there has to be a way of showing to Putin that what Zelenskyy and all Ukrainians are most concerned about is, even if we come to some form of agreement, even if the United States signs, it won't be something like NATO. It will not be that level of a definitive defense or commitment. But even if we're given some degrees of security commitment by the United States, 6 months from now, a year from now, will Trump change his mind and withdraw from that treaty or withdraw from that agreement the same way he did, say, with the Iranian nuclear agreement, when he said, we're withdrawing from this JCPO because it's a horrible agreement, but it also, don't worry, I'm going to renegotiate something better. And I think Ukrainians are worried about that.
So you're kind of a think tank. What do you think? Where is this going to go?
What do you think in your tank?
I suppose we're more of a platform. I don't know, we would call ourselves a think tank. But I suppose, where do I think it will go? I think we're still a long way off. I think there are a variety of reasons why Putin chose to invade Ukraine. The 2 biggest ones that I think he put forward to the Russian people to justify this, and now you have 250,000 Russians have been killed. You have almost 700,000 who've been wounded. So almost 1 million Russians have been wounded or killed. You've had a massive expense on that. Two of the biggest reasons he said why we have to do it, he said, Ukraine and NATO is going to invade and attack Russia, which was nonsense. Ukraine was a very long way off from ever joining NATO, if it was going to happen at all. NATO itself probably did not want to take on something as large as Ukraine with a huge border along Russia, a lot of other different reasons. But basically said we have to watch out and be worried about NATO. That has completely backfired because of his invasion. NATO is now bigger and stronger. It is Sweden and Finland have joined. He has doubled the number of miles of border that Russia now has with NATO, with the inclusion of Finland. And the other kind of bit of madness was so if he said we had to have this war because they were going to attack us. It's a very difficult spot to go back to the Russian people, say, well, we will accept some form of an agreement where there are large numbers of European troops, of NATO troops, or even American troops stationed in Ukraine, which they were not in 2022 before the invasion. So that's kind of a difficult position to get out of. And secondly, just in terms of, if you remember the madness, despite the fact, obviously, that Zelenskyy is Jewish, Putin had for a long time leading up to the invasion said, these are neo-Nazis, we have to get rid of this neo-Nazi regime. But okay, well, if they're the worst regime ever, this is the worst regime that the Russians have dealt with since the Nazis, since Hitler. You're negotiating with them, and that exact same regime that you said you had to replace, that was the very beginning of the war. The attempt to get into Kyiv quickly was to displace and possibly kill Zelenskyy. That has not happened, and now he's saying we'll accept and we'll leave them there. So I think that's hard for the Russian people to accept.
So Ronan O'Malley is the Chief Program Officer for the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. Ronan, thank you so much for joining us. Clearly, there's a lot more to cover. We will have to have you back on Hello Houston.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Coming up, we'll discuss an effort to move the Space Shuttle Discovery. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues. With federal funding cuts, Houston Public Media has lost $2.2 million annually. In response, we have launched the Resiliency Fund, an urgent initiative to protect the programs and services you rely on. That includes PBS Kids, that provides free educational programming to children and families across Greater Houston. Your support of the Resiliency Fund helps keep this vital service accessible to our community. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Partnership with Texas Southern University brings to you The Vibe, R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul, music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
Support comes from Dekamera. The 25-26 season features pianists Daniil Trifonov and Yuliana Avdieva, the Parker and Isidore String Quartets, jazz with Pat Metheny, and more. Information and tickets at dekamera.com.
Join us for Hello Houston, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., taking a deep dive into the stories that matter to Houstonians, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained, with the generous support from our founding sponsor, Kathy Sanders.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from UT Health Houston, home to Dr. Mary Aitken, who is focused on keeping children safe from preventable injuries through research, education, and advocacy. More at uth.edu/manyfaces.
Support comes from the Houston Museum of Natural Science, presenting Audubon's Birds of America, showcasing life-size renderings of Audubon's illustrations from the early 1800s, closing September 1st. Information and tickets are at hmns.org.
Support comes from SPACE, Texas family-owned since 1962, offering cool sips, snacks, and more to help beat the heat for a cooler summer. Details at spexonline.com. The fun starts here.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
The Space Shuttle Discovery was the oldest and most accomplished orbiter until its service ended in 2011. Since then, it's been preserved at the Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum. In April, Texas Senators John Cornyn and Ted Cruz introduced the Bring the Space Shuttle Home Act, which aimed to move the shuttle from the Smithsonian to Space Center Houston. This effort was included in President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill as a provision that issued $85 million to move the shuttle from Virginia to Texas. And joining us now to tell us more about this is Robert Pearlman, the editor of collectSPACE. Robert, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And if you have a question for Robert, you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. You know, Robert, I've got to start. Why do you think moving the Discovery shuttle to Houston was championed so strongly and so fiercely by Texas Senators Ted Cruz and John Cornyn?
Well, it's to be honest, it's not quite clear. It sort of came out of left field. There was an opportunity to move the space shuttle to the museums back in 2012. There was a process by which the different museums around the country could propose their best idea about how to display a space shuttle, demonstrate they had the funding to bring the space shuttle to their facility. That went through a panel discussion and a ranking, and there were museums that were selected and there were museums that were not. And then that seemed to be the end of it. The shuttles went on display. Millions of people have seen them since. And then in April, this bill popped up that said, let's move Discovery to Houston. And it sort of caught everyone off guard. I think it is, it shows Houston pride that we'd love to have a real space shuttle here. Johnson Space Center was the home, or it still is the home of the astronauts, home of mission control. Every one of the 135 missions that the space shuttle flew, including the 39 flown by Discovery, was monitored from here, was trained from here, and so it certainly has a history with the space shuttle program. But Space Center Houston, which is where the senators want to place the shuttle, already has a very impressive space shuttle display. If you've not been to it, it has a mock space shuttle sitting on top of the real 747 that delivered the space shuttles back and forth across the country and then to their museums.
Yeah. You talk about, Celeste mentioned it in the intro, we were just talking about the $85 million, but some estimate it's really $300 million it would cost to make this move. What is your understanding of what the actual cost could be? And if it is that much more, already people are worried about that $85 million. What happens if it is closer to $300 million?
So the language in the bill actually sets aside $5 million for the move and the remainder for the building of a facility to display it, although it allows for more of the display money to be used for the move if they run over budget. But as you say, the Smithsonian itself has said that their estimates would be that it would cost $200 to $300 million to move Space Shuttle Discovery to Virginia. And other estimates have put it even higher, upwards to $1 billion. And part of the problem is that what we just mentioned, the 747 that flew the space shuttles across the country are retired. The one here in Houston's on display. The other one sitting for the past decade in an air park out in California. It would have to be totally recertified, given new engines. Even then, it's not clear if it could be made flight worthy.
Well, Robert, that's my question. I read your article in collectSPACE. There's no practical way to do this.
So the way that they're proposing is putting it on a barge, and
during
barging
hurricane
into
season.
Houston. But there isn't a large enough closed-in barge to put the space shuttle into. You don't want to take apart the space shuttle because Discovery was maintained in as close to as flown condition as possible. If you want to remove the wings or the tail in order to fit it into a barge, you'd be ripping apart the tiles and blankets that give it part of its historic nature, and you wouldn't be able to replace those with anything but replicas. And there's also the issue that to get from the Udvar Hazy annex of the National Air and Space Museum in Virginia to the closest waterway that could take the barge would be anywhere between 30 and 100 miles of a road trip. Just to put that into perspective, California received Space Shuttle Endeavour, had to take it from LAX out to the California Science Center. That was a 12-mile move. It was supposed to take 2 days. It took 3 full days, and it cost $12 million.
But even before we start moving it, Robert, aren't there some major legal issues here? Like, for example, who exactly owns the shuttle?
Exactly. Well, we should start off with saying that while the original act said Space Shuttle Discovery, the big beautiful bill that it was the language put into doesn't allow for specific awards of money. So they had to make it very generic. So it just became a space vehicle that carried astronauts into space has to be moved to a NASA center that took part in the commercial crew program and then placed into a nonprofit within the municipality of that center. So nowhere does it mention Space Shuttle Discovery or the Smithsonian. So there are 4 remaining space shuttles. Endeavour belongs to the California Science Center. Title was transferred over. Enterprise didn't carry people into space. It was a test vehicle. It's in New York, so it doesn't even qualify under the bill. Space Shuttle Atlantis is on display in Florida at NASA's own visitor center. It still belongs to NASA. And then there's Space Shuttle Discovery, which has been at the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian contends that the items in their collection belong to the Smithsonian. They are a federally funded, they do receive federally funded monies to operate, but they are not part of the government. They're not part of any of the 3 branches of the government. So they consider themselves an independent institution. They have a title document that says that they own Discovery outright, and they're not prepared to give it up.
Well, I don't blame them. And again, if there's a chance that you're going to hurt the Discovery, which it sounds like from everything I read, there's no practical way to move it by land, and then there's no practical way to move it by water, and you can't move it by air. So unless you're going to blink it somehow, it's just simply not going to happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, even if we were to have everything line up and you get it into the water safely onto a barge, you still have the risk of entering the Gulf of Mexico during a hurricane. You can't plan these things out in advance, but even just a bad storm. And then if you take it out on an open air barge, as someone proposed, and not a closed one, then you also take the real, not even a risk, the guarantee that it will be permanently damaged by the exposure to saltwater air.
So do you think, though, Cornyn and Cruz understood all of this and signing on to this bill just as rah-rah, it sounds like a great idea, or did they believe practically it could happen?
Good question.
Yeah. Photo op.
I've tried to, as someone who's been covering the story since it was announced, I've tried to get interviews with both of them and been turned away. I did take part in a press conference with Cornyn and asked him about it a little bit. I think their interest is less the logistics and more this would be good for Houston. And unfortunately the logistics are large.
Yeah.
Just obviously there seems to be a lot of roadblocks here, but in President Trump's big beautiful bill, he did add $9.9 billion to NASA's budget. How much of those funds do you think could be allocated? I know that's in question, but also, do you think that what will be good for Houston if we don't necessarily get this Discovery shuttle? So,
of that 9.9 billion, only the 85 million could be applied to the space shuttle. It caps it there. There's supposedly a fund here in Texas that has been willing to put up some additional money, but the details on that are few. If you look at other vehicles that NASA owns that could fulfill the purpose of this bill and end up with something coming to Houston, you could potentially award Space Center Houston Artemis 2, which is going to be the capsule that launches in February, or as soon as February, no later than April, to take the first humans back to the moon.
So that's the
loop
one
around
we
the moon
want.
And come back.
The Artemis 2. That's right.
Sounds like a great
Robert,
idea.
Thank you so much. We are speaking with Robert Pearlman, the editor of collectSPACE, about the Space Shuttle Discovery. Thanks, Robert, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll continue diving into the top stories of the day. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Serverless Solutions, aligning businesses with technology, including cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and cloud-based infrastructure. More information is available at serverless-solutions.com.
We could see a 30% chance of showers and thunderstorms, mainly after 3 o'clock today. Our high getting up to near 93. It's 88. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, we'll dive into the top headlines of the day with President Trump announcing that he plans to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots ahead of next year's midterm elections. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. We'll also discuss a major milestone for one of Houston's most impactful and perhaps lesser-known nonprofits, the Pursuit Center.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. Plus, we'll also speak with Bill Mintz, founder of Freewheels Houston, who will tell us about their work in repairing donated bicycles and distributing them to individuals in need.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call or text at 713-440-8870 or email us, talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just go to hellohouston.org and click the big orange banner.
Hello Houston continues right after the news from NPR and News 88.7.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump says he is working on a bilateral meeting between his counterparts from Russia and Ukraine, and depending on how that goes, a trilateral meeting with him would follow. Russia says it remains open to all of it, but as NPR's Charles Maines reports from Moscow, the Kremlin remains vague on the timing of the talks.
In an interview on state television, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow was not refusing any format of meetings, be they between Putin and Zelenskyy or eventually including President Trump. Yet Lavrov warned preparations for such events take time. His comments suggested Moscow was looking to slow-walk Trump's calls for a Putin-Zelenskyy meeting in the coming days or weeks. Trump says Putin agreed to the bilateral talks to be followed by a trilateral meeting, including Trump, following a phone call he placed to the Russian leader Monday. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov was more circumspect, saying only Moscow was considering the possibility of holding higher-level direct talks with Ukraine. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
The White House says dozens of homeless encampments have been cleared in Washington, D.C. A week ago, President Trump sent hundreds of federal agents and National Guard troops to the city. NPR's Jennifer Ludden reports it is not clear where the people who've been displaced have gone.
Homeless service providers say many likely opted to stay outside, moving around to evade authorities. Some are in shelters. The city made more beds available, or hotels paid for by community members. Jesse Rabinowitz with the National Homelessness Law Center says the mass displacement will make it even harder to eventually connect people to housing.
It was so fast that I worry people were not able to save vital documents, medication, heirlooms, clothes, things like that.
The White House says it has not arrested any people for being homeless, and service providers are relieved about that. But they suggest the money this federal surge is costing could have gone toward affordable housing instead. Jennifer Ludden, NPR News, Washington.
Texas Republicans are pursuing a redrawn congressional map in their state that would give the GOP 5 additional U.S. House seats. California Democrats are looking to counterbalance with their own new map. Laura Fitzgerald with Cap Radio has the latest.
It puts together somewhat unlikely areas. For example, one district would include communities in Modoc County all the way up north near the Oregon border, with Marin County, which is way down near San Francisco. Those are two very politically different regions, and under this proposal, they'd have the same congressional representative. Democrats here say the plan is to vote on the map this week, and then this will go to the voters so that they can have the final say in November.
Cap Radio's Laura Fitzgerald reporting state lawmakers in Texas and California have been advancing their respective measures on a redistricting battle that ultimately could decide the balance of power in Congress in next year's midterm elections. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. The Texas law prohibiting students from using devices in the classroom has sparked quite the debate. 16-year-old Celia Goodlow, a junior student at Mansfield ISD, started a petition calling the ban unfair, saying it puts students at risk in emergency situations.
The petition, for me, it was more than about, just phones and personal devices. It's more about being heard, being safe, and being treated like human beings, not problems that need to be controlled. And I just hope that this sparks a real change and gets lawmakers to start listening to the people they're supposed to protect.
The petition is meant to grab the attention of lawmakers and has over 130,000 signatures. Texas school districts are required to have a written policy in place by September 18th. The Fort Bend Library website will be fully operational starting September 2nd. The website was targeted by a cyber attack roughly 6 months ago. News 88.7's Natalie Weber tells us more.
Library patrons haven't been able to access the online catalog or their accounts for months, but the county says those services will be restored during the first week of September. County commissioners have approved more than $2 million in contracts to fix the website. The library will waive late fees for books checked out during the website outage until the end of November. From the Fort Bend County Bureau, I'm Natalie Weber, News 88.7.
Taking a look at sports, the Tigers buried the Astros last night in Detroit 10-zip. They'll have another try at Detroit this afternoon at 5:40. The Astros lead the AL West by just 1.5 games. Checking your weather, spotty thunder showers expected late this afternoon, a high of 97 with a heat index of 105. Mostly clear tonight, 79 the low. Right now, partly cloudy, 90 degrees on the UH campus. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, home of the Name Your Price tool, so drivers can see coverage options at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
From Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Okay, now you're officially back with us.
What?
Because you're in the intro.
Earlier they ran a bumper there and they left your name out.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that's not going to stop me.
No, it won't.
No.
And you can see that he's here by going to our YouTube channel, just looking for Houston Public Media. And once you do, subscribe, click that bell, and like us.
Subscribe. Yes, and we also have an Instagram account. You can go to hellohouston.show, and a lot of times some really great nuggets are on there.
Clips from the show. And, of course, on YouTube, you can see the backlog of our backlog. Makes it sound bad. The library. There we go. The library of our content is available there.
The classics.
The classics. They're all classics. How do you decide?
Our greatest hits.
Coming up, we're going to be talking about the Pursuit Center, and we're going to talk about bikes. That's all coming still on the show. How is that weather doing, Frank? We usurped it at the beginning of the first hour.
Well, you don't want to be on a bike down around Matagorda Bay. It's a mess out west, off to the northwest, even in Harris County, up around Cypress. It looks like it's a few showers continue. So this is a system that came out of Louisiana. I saw it yesterday, and like last evening, and I was like, oh, well, that's going to be a pretty good boundary for things to develop. And that is exactly what happened. So it's moving away. Things should stabilize for us, especially once we get past the 2 o'clock hour. And then it should be on the quiet side. But it's going to be humid, as you can imagine.
When you were gone, we started looking at a potential storm hitting us come Labor Day weekend.
Really?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Do you really want to talk about that? When is Labor Day?
Well, the reason I want to talk about is I'm assuming other people like me are already trying to make plans if they're going to get away, go somewhere, do something. And that traditionally seems to be a troublesome weekend when it comes to weather.
Well, it's kind of right in the middle of things. But, we call them model canes. Anything that's more than 8 days out is really suspect to actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you get within that 8-day window, you really have to start paying attention. Right now, that same system that was going to hit us and then hit Florida, the latest model run takes it right across the peninsula of Mexico and into the Bay of Campeche and then into Mexico. So, it's all over the place because the model doesn't know what to do. It makes a mistake with every day you go out. And so the farther you go out in time, the wider the path of the mistake's going to be.
Yeah.
So, 8 days is pretty good. Well, I mean, listen, when I started in this business, to get the forecast right the next day was amazing. So to be able to get 8 days out is pretty good.
Because I thought when you started in this business, you pulled out your farmer's almanac and you could go years in it.
Which was brought to me by a homing pigeon. It's like, thank you, Oliver, for my farmer's almanac.
Oh, I made myself laugh. All right, so let's take us into the real world of news.
He thinks he's so young.
Yes, I love it. Yes. Coming out of Washington, D.C., we're going to go. President Trump wants to get rid of voting by mail and potentially using some voting machines, getting rid of those. He announced Monday on his social media site, Truth Social, that he plans to, quote, lead a movement, unquote, to get rid of mail-in ballots and voting machines in the country ahead of next year's midterm elections. Part of his plan includes signing an executive order that bars states from using mail ballots and potentially some voting machines. He said without evidence that voting machines are highly inaccurate, as well as more expensive and less reliable than counting paper ballots.
Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots.
What do you think of President Trump trying to regulate elections? Is this a good idea or a bad idea? Now is the time to chime in at 713-440-8870.
I'm ringing my chime over here. I want to chime in. Ding, 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 ding. I sound like the opening of the legislature in the Texas House.
Yes.
I don't think, as I understand, he doesn't have the power to do that. Elections are run by the states.
But he has the power over the ones that have the power to do that.
Well, yes, but it's run by the states, but also the Congress has the right to regulate federal elections, not the executive branch. So in two different areas, he's not supposed to have the authority. That being said, what does that matter in today's day and age? The other thing I want to chime in.
It still matters.
I hope so. The other thing that's interesting is he says that this came to him while talking to the Russian president. He was meeting with Putin, and Putin said, how can you have a fair election when you have mail-in ballots? Nobody has them. Except for the fact Russia has mail-in ballots.
Yeah, and we don't even have to go that far.
Yeah.
President Trump himself urged his supporters to vote using mail-in ballots prior to the 2024 presidential election.
But his argument would be, and I'm sure if everyone else can use them, then I'm going to urge my people to use them, but they're not just and right, and I'm going to fix that.
Anything that doesn't go his way, he doesn't want.
And there also is statistics that show Democrats have been significantly more likely to vote using mail-in ballots compared to Republicans since the 2020 election.
And that's the interesting part there, since 2020. It used to be the other way. And then what happened was because there were more older voters tended to be more Republican and older voters tended to use mail-in ballots more. But then when the pandemic came, it shifted because there was all that push for mail-in ballots. And at the same time, Trump was saying, don't use mail-in ballots, go and be there in person. So he shifted the field and now is shifting it again, I think he's trying to do.
Right. And you think older people or disabled people are the ones that use mail-in ballots, but that simply isn't true. First of all, the military who are overseas, they use mail-in ballots. What are you going to do about that?
Expats.
Expats.
When I was in Australia, I used a mail-in ballot. I know lots of Americans that right here in Houston are expats in other countries, and they practice their right to vote even though they work in other countries.
Well, and so you rule out, I mean, you can't just say, I don't want these people to have mail-in ballots, but I still want the military to have them. That you can't do. So if you're going to...
Can you?
Or can you? Maybe you can redistrict so that these people get mail-in ballots and these people don't.
713-440-8870. What do you think about ending mail-in ballots? Do you use them? Do you think they're effective? Do you think they're corrupt? What about voting machines? That's the part that confused me more. Let's go to the phones. Alvin from the 3rd Ward is calling in. Alvin, what's on your mind today?
All right, how you guys doing? All right, welcome back, Frank.
Hey, thank you. At least you remember me, Alvin.
Of course. Okay, so you guys actually already answered part of this, which is he has absolutely no authority to do such. Yes, he does have influence of those who do, but thank God he does not. Because this is the guy who actually tried to stop the Electoral College vote count in J6. And so it's a good thing that that our elections are decentralized in the way that they are, and that it was never a priority or something that the founders wanted, where power would be concentrated where the chief executive got to determine how elections would actually take place. And lastly, yes, it would disenfranchise a whole bunch of people who actually use mail-in ballots and obviously voting machines. The man absolutely has no idea what he's talking about as it relates to a whole bunch of other things. And thank God he doesn't have the power to do this.
Thank you very much for that, Alvin. A lot of food for the thought there. It's interesting he wants to use paper ballots and slide them through the machine. When has that ever gone wrong? Let's ask people from the 2000 election where hanging chads became a big concern of ours. And so we kind of moved away from those paper ballots for that reason, because that was being problematic. So how do you do it? You know, town hall, show of hands?
Well, you know what? Technically, when we vote here in Texas, when I've gone to the voting machine, actually it comes out on a computer gives you a paper ballot, and you put that paper ballot in to be counted. So in a way, the only difference is checking it, I guess, with a number 2 pencil. What are you supposed to use? I've never done a mail-in ballot. Have you?
Well,
I did. I helped my mom do one during the pandemic. She wanted to vote. She hadn't gotten as far along in her dementia. She was still engaged in the political. Like right now, she is still eligible for a ballot, but I don't let her vote.
You have a moral issue.
Yeah, she doesn't know who the candidate is. She doesn't know the issue. She shouldn't be voting. But back then, we did do it. And I will tell you, it's complicated.
Well, I also find it very interesting, the timing of this, because Fox News just agreed Tuesday to pay Dominion Voting Systems nearly $800 million to avert a trial in the voting machine company's lawsuit that would have exposed how the network promoted lies about the 2020 presidential election.
800 or 80?
800 million.
800 million.
Good Lord.
It was, I think, $787 exactly, but settlement. And it was Dominion out of Colorado said, our machines are not faulty. It got
even
very
Trump's
ugly.
Justice Department said that there was no systemic or problematic errors in the voting process in the 2020 election.
No.
Right.
And so it has become something that they have fanned and created bigger and bigger, and now they're working to fix a problem they kind of created in word only. And that's where the concern comes in. Now, are there potential problems in voting by mail? Absolutely. I was going to say it's difficult. It's complicated. It was trying to follow the rules and the sign, and then you have to sign on top of an envelope, and send it in. I think it's a deterrent. It's so complicated to do it. But the complication was there to try and make sure it was safe.
But it was the fanning of the conspiracy theories that claimed that the equipment was switching votes.
That was an argument.
From
That was
former President Donald Trump to Democrat. And so that point is that it's very interesting when you bring into question, when you start doubting our election systems and the machines.
Right. You can't have a free democracy if you don't trust the election system. You just can't.
Right.
That's the very definition of corruption.
I remember this. I think I've talked about this on the show before, and I don't know if we still do this or not. But back in Chicago, when there was election day, they would print the election tallies of every district, every area, and you could look and see in your area, 4 people voted for this, 36 voted for that, and they did it for the whole city. So the receipt was shown, and you could then, as someone in a community, look and say, that feels right, that doesn't feel right. So there are checks and balances that have always been out there for it. In Texas, what we do is we give you the printout, plus it's fed through the machine so it can be checked, so you can look and see what's going through. And there is a record. That paper is kept. You've seen that paper with what it says you're voting for. It goes in the bin when it does tally.
I feel like this conversation is making me want to have a conversation with Tanisha Hudspeth, our Harris County clerk. I think we need to bring her on later on this week and chat with her just to get about
her take on it.
Her take
I'm
on it.
I'm almost surprised, and we might get her eventually. I mean, I've signed a lot of very legal papers using DocuSign via the internet. They're binding. You agree to buy a car or a house. You make an offer. You sign a DocuSign, and that is a legally binding document. You can't just say, "Oh, wait, that wasn't me," or whatever. They authenticate you, and then you are liable. So I'm surprised we haven't gotten to sort of a DocuSign system for mail-in ballots. I mean, why is that such a stretch? Oh, well, people are going to hack in and change it. None of this, I mean, really?
I know, I think security. There's a lot, but again,
well, you're worried. But no, my point is, you're worried about that, aren't you? When I say let's use a DocuSign system for a ballot,
voting,
you're a little skeptical of that, aren't you?
I am a little skeptical. Absolutely.
And I think that's why people can be a little skeptical of mail-in ballots.
That's why I think they should use Evite. And then Evite, you can pick what you want. Everyone uses Evite.
Right. But I mean, I think a DocuSign system I think it can work. Now, it depends on honesty, obviously, but if they authenticate you like they do on so many things. I mean, I got Medicare by being authenticated as me. No one came to my house. Nobody's made me go to somewhere to say I'm eligible. They did it all through the internet.
But this is exactly where the danger happens, is that we start to question systems that have been in place for a very long time that we know are extremely accurate. And then we start wanting, we think it's broken, but it's not, essentially.
Yeah.
And that is where you start to get concerned about democracy, when you start looking at questioning the way our elections are held, questioning our medical, experts, and wondering about
question science.
There's pillars of democracy that you can erode at, and that's to me where we start getting concerns.
The thing that bothers me in this whole debate when it comes to voting is that time after time it has been looked into, checked, and there isn't systemic fraud in our voting.
It is.
And that it happens is does not have an impact on the outcomes of these elections by the sheer number of people voting. Yet it has taken up so much time and attention, and the belief continues to grow that it is not accurate, that it does not work. And that's a difficult thing.
Well, if it doesn't go your way, it was fraud. That's the problem. You can't just always scream, I didn't win, so therefore I was cheated.
Right.
That's just not the way life works.
Right. 713-440-8870. Give us a call. What do you think about all this, especially when we talk about voting in our country, in our county, in our city? What do you think? Gus is on the line from Matagorda County. Gus, what are you thinking?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
We can.
So it is my understanding that the Secretary of State of all the independent states is in charge of the elections.
Yep. I think we brought that up at the beginning.
That there are 10, it might be 11 states that the only way you can vote is by mail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw, and unfortunately,
that's a very good point.
I cannot remember what state it was, but I saw their Secretary of State on the news this morning talking about that almost 100% of their vote happens by mail. Is it Colorado, maybe? And they they don't have a problem with it.
Well, and think about these, as I've always pointed out, Harris County, if we were our own state, we'd be number 25 in the
Right.
country. Do you look at these states that have very sparse populations, like Alaska? You're going to expect everybody in Alaska to go to a poll physically and present an ID and vote as opposed to a mail-in ballot? And it seems unreasonable for much of the country and much of the red states of the country.
Right.
You would think that they would really support mail-in ballots because they're Republican strongholds, and they're likely not able to get from their ranch in northern Montana to a reasonable place to vote.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, it's an interesting conundrum.
It is. It really is. And I do want to clarify the most recent Newsmax settlement was $67 million. The bigger one that I was talking about with Dominion out of Colorado was in 2023. Just wanted to clarify. But coming up on Hello Houston, a local organization celebrating 75 years of empowering individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities like autism and related conditions, plus bikes for those in needs. This is News 88.7.
Hello, I'm Josh Adams, General Manager of Houston Public Media. This station just lost $2.2 million in federal support annually. To keep our station strong, we've launched the Resiliency Fund, powered by community members just like you. Your support will help bridge the funding gap and ensure these programs remain free and accessible to everyone. If public media and this station matter to you, now is the time to act. Support the Resiliency Fund today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
9 on News 88.7.
Hi, this is Matt Harrop. There's been a lot of news to cover in Houston over the last few months. Keep listening to Houston Public Media for the latest, and if you've got a car, truck, boat, or RV you don't need anymore, donate it to the station. It could be worth hundreds of dollars in support. The donation process is easy for you, and we'll pick up your vehicle in any condition. Here's how to get started. Go to houstonpublicmedia.org/cars to learn more. Thank you.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from the Holdsworth Center, taking nominations to honor teachers in the Houston area to re-energize at a wellness retreat in the Texas Hill Country. Nomination information at teacherretreat.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Certa Pro Painters, offering residential and commercial painting services, from color consultations to full project management. Estimates and more at CertaPro.com.
Support comes from Houston Theater Week, a citywide celebration of live performances. Participating organizations include theater, dance, and music presenters. Returning August 18th through 24th. Tickets at HoustonTheaterWeek.com.
Support comes from the Houston Museum of Natural Science, presenting Audubon's Birds of America, showcasing life-size renderings of Audubon's illustrations from the early 1800s, closing September 1st. Information and tickets are at hmns.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. Call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org to get your comment in on today's topics. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
All right, this year marks a major milestone for one of Houston's most impactful but perhaps lesser-known nonprofits. It's called the Pursuit Center, a relatively new name for this whole group. We'll talk about that. The Pursuit Center is celebrating 75 years of empowering individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, autism-related conditions. It all began in 1950 in a small schoolhouse. Sounds like a Little House on the Prairie guy when he was here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It all began in 1950 in a small schoolhouse, but it was started by a group of determined parents whose children were challenged, and they wanted an organization that would offer everything. And now it's everything from housing and healthcare to job placement, life skills training. So let's talk about this with Charles Njuguna, the CEO of the Pursuit Center. I tell you, I read all about your group last night on the internet and your website. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You've come a long way, baby.
It is a long way. I mean, back in 1950, I was playing soccer when we started it. No, I'm just kidding. I was not here.
I was going to say way.
Yeah, no.
Not quite. Yeah. 75 years. This started really focusing on mental retardation.
Yes.
But it's grown for people who are mentally challenged to just autism challenged. I guess other disabilities.
Yeah. So it's first of all, thanks for having me. It's amazing.
We're glad you're here.
Yeah. It started with a group of parents because back then the practice when you had children with what is now colloquially known as intellectual disabilities is they would be institutionalized.
Mm-hmm.
And in this day and age, there's still some institutions. The state still has some institutions that they have. But these parents wondered, what if, like with most things in the world, right? What if we did something different? And so a group of parents came together and they said, let's just try something different for our kids and see what the outcomes look like. And over the years, it's morphed into workshops. They had workshops at the time. The education sector back then did not incorporate these kids into the education system. All that changed in 1978 is when all the school districts are required to incorporate these kids into regular classes. And so along the years, we've changed with changes in society, changes in how people perceive intellectual disabilities, changes in how people perceive autism. And so through the years, you touched briefly on the change in the name. It's just kind of just rebranding and thinking about, we were known as the Center for a long time, the Center for Pursuit, but the Center has a connotation of a center, an institution, right? And we thought, what if we just talk about pursuit and just talk about pursuing possibilities, pursuing better lives for the individuals we serve? And so that's part of the reason for the rebrand.
I think it's a good rebrand.
Yeah, you talk about how there have been advancements in the way we handle these situations. I'm curious, where do you think we're getting it the best right? And where do you think we still have a place to grow in this?
Wow. The best right, I think it starts in the home. I think it's really more of, like with many things, how you perceive, how you bring these people up in your own home, right? And so a lot of nonprofits, a lot of church, faith-based organizations are trying to find ways to help this kind of people. I think where we get it worst, sad to say, is government. And the reason I say that, right, is if you just try to pigeonhole these people and pigeonhole how you fund the services, right? So right now, one of our soapboxes is the folks that we serve, the state reimburses us for some of the services we provide, but they only pay us $10.60 per hour for the people who work and help these folks, right? McDonald's pays $15 and up. And so they're really cash strapped.
Well, tell us about your operation. How many people are you helping? Are you volunteer-based primarily? Where are your funds coming from? Let's start with how many folks are like in your care right now?
Right now, as we speak, we probably have about around 600, a little over 600 people in different services that we're helping.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I find so interesting about Pursuit is that it is very layered in how you're helping. And you're not just helping children, you're helping adults, like you were mentioning. And talk kind of like what Frank was saying, talk to us how layered it is, because it is education, it's rides, it's
job placement.
Yes, and it's so residential is what everybody thinks about.
Right.
Where will your family members live? And we try to provide a way where you can stay with us through your life cycle, essentially. But then it's life skills. We have a lot of folks who come to our facility on the east side from different providers, not just our own, not just people who stay in our homes. And we teach them life skills. We help them find employment services. We're the largest user of Metrolift in Houston. So if you came to our campus in the morning, you'd think it's like a downtown bus station, St. Joseph's, with all the metros. And so we have folks coming over from different places to work. And it's helping. We partner with organizations. We have a gentleman, Kennedy, who works at FedEx in Richmond. And it's probably the top, just the amount of packages he's able to pack into a truck. It's phenomenal to hear him talk, right? And hear him talk about being able to buy his mom presence and being able to pay taxes. We all hate paying taxes, but some of these folks really like that they can pay taxes.
Yeah, they have
but
an
we
income.
also have a program at the VA hospital, right? If someone's at the VA hospital, the stretchers, the wheelchairs being pushed, those are our folks who provide the patient transport, taking the samples from the lab to the rooms and vice versa.
Yeah, again, are you volunteer-based or employee-based or
yes.
a little of both?
We are a little of both. Because many of our services are regulated, we have to have employees.
Right.
So now we have close to 300 employees in total. But we also welcome volunteers. Anyone listening, we welcome volunteers because it could be as simple as coming to play bingo with some of our folks. It could be showing up to help clean some of our homes, or it could be just also, we have a plethora of ways that people can serve and volunteer. So it's a mix of both.
What ignites the passion in you to do this work?
Wow. So I guess personally, this country has given me a lot, right? I came here 24 years ago, maybe, with just a wallet and a passport. I grew up in Africa. And so being able to now be blessed to help other people find better lives, I think that's what, when you see somebody who could not write or could not do Excel, and a few months later they can actually do simple tasks in Excel, it just wakes you up and gives you a reason to do it.
And it sounds like the impact that you're having on these individuals is great, and it makes it, but also the impact that it has on their families. Can you talk to us about that? Because oftentimes parents with adult children that have disability are still taking on burdens that they shouldn't necessarily be.
Yes. I think some of the people who come to us to spend the day with us, right? Just the mom being able to go to work. You think about someone who, from when the child was born, back when we started, back in 1950, the life expectancy was probably at most in the 20s, 20-year-old or 25. Wow. And today we have folks in our program who are in their 80s.
Wow.
Right? And so you think about people who've always wondered, what can I do and where do you get? You think about, it could be a church on Sunday or going to work, right? There are families who, when they go with their kids to church, they have to sit with their kids because you don't have enough people who would know how to take care of an autistic son, for instance. Mm-hmm. And so now that child, if you think about that example, for 2 hours, if we work with a church that has qualified staff who can take care of the son for 2 hours, and for 2 hours, mom can just sit and focus and relax, so mom can go shopping.
Well, and it's a whole society domino effect.
It is.
I mean, what you're doing helps those directly, and then it helps their families, and in turn, it ends up helping me.
Absolutely.
I probably don't know it, but it probably does.
Yep. And you will go to HEB and you find some of our people parking. But then if you go to HEB, when we work with that manager, we teach them how to work with the folks who we serve. But it also teaches them empathy and compassion for all of the other employees. Because some of the people we help and serve are probably the most loyal. And as we train their supervisors, it's been found that those supervisors then become better to serve your regular, typical employees.
Well, and you have a huge facility. I mean, looking online, you've got a lot of buildings, a lot of space. Where exactly is the Pursuit Center?
We are on Harrisburg, so we're probably 5 minutes from the Dynamo Stadium.
Okay.
So just east of downtown.
Yep.
And the reason for the campus, we have obviously our offices and some of the programs we provide, but one of the buildings is geared to be an incubator for other organizations like ours. So we have Baylor College of Medicine has a transitional clinic on our campus. We have Bloom Fitness who provide, it's kind of a Peloton type, similar to a Peloton. We have Gray Therapy, that's a speech therapy for IDD folks. We have we haven't signed the contract, so they probably don't want me saying it, but another large organization that serves the IDD population that's probably, hopefully, moving on to our campus as well. The Down Syndrome Association of Houston also rents some office space from us. And so the idea for us is to have a campus, just an area where we can collaborate, where we can learn from each other, and we can provide a whole host of holistic services.
And can anybody, what is the process to apply or to be a part to get some of these services?
Yes, anybody can come and serve. Well, let me rephrase that. To get the services,
to receive services, and then if somebody wants to support and help with volunteering.
Okay. To receive services, because of the nature of the services, the state is very particular, and so there is what's called a waiver program with the Health and Human Service Commission, the Texas HHSC, and it's Medicaid funded. So some of our services, to your question, Frank, are Medicaid funded. Some of them, for the employment services, work with Texas Workforce Commission. So there's a process to go through. And our folks, if someone reached out to us at info@pursuitcenter.org, they can find out how to do that.
So what are you doing to celebrate 75 years?
We had a big luncheon in May.
Yeah.
We had Houston City Hall had our colors for a weekend back in April. We've had a number of other events through the year. I got to address City Hall, and we got a proclamation, which is awesome. We've got to interact with Judge Hidalgo, so it's been an amazing year.
Yeah.
And of course, I get to hang out with you guys.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the best part.
As we come to the end of the conversation, it has been said, and this will probably be a bit for you to hear, but that you are one of the most admired CEOs in the city.
Woo!
And so, what is it you think you bring to leading an organization that is? Because I think no matter what walk of life, we're looking for strong, good leaders. And for the record you have, what is it leaders should keep in mind when dealing? And you talk about the sheer number of people and clients.
Oh wow, thank you. I can talk about anything except myself. I think for me, I view leadership as servanthood, like the people we serve, right? So we a year ago, unfortunately, we had a lot more employees, but we ran into some issues and we shrunk it down. But I bring that up to say, for me, I view the people who serve the clients, they do all the work. I tell them all the time, they do all the heavy lifting. I just hang around and look pretty. And I think if you have that attitude, I think if you think about the people you're serving, so for me, the frontline folks, how can I make them do their job better, right? Many, many years ago, I worked in hospitality, and I worked with the Marriott chain. And Bill Marriott had this philosophy that if you treat your employees right, they will treat your customers right. Now, that was obviously in a for-profit environment. And so for me, is how we serve our employees, how we make them enjoy coming to work every day and create an environment that they can just be themselves. I think that will translate into them serving the people we serve better, and then they'll let me keep showing up every week.
Wow. Hey, people can get involved, right?
Yes.
Just go to pursuitcenter.org. You get involved maybe professionally or on a volunteer basis.
Yes, info@pursuitcenter.org. And if you email us or you call 713-525-8400, and somebody will answer and point you in the right direction.
Well, good luck.
Thank you all so much.
Njuguna is the CEO of the Pursuit Center. Charles, again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you
congratulations.
All so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Coming up, we're going to talk to the founder of Freewheels Houston. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
With federal support gone, Houston Public Media needs a stronger foundation for the future. The Houston Public Media Resiliency Fund is our response to ensure this service remains strong, stable, and community-powered. Your gift today helps us stay on the air tomorrow and the day after that. Give now to the Resiliency Fund at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
That's tonight at 10 o'clock.
Houston Matters is your essential daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston.
These counties have been growing a lot.
I think what has been holding us back is the fact that for 2 legislative sessions, schools didn't really get an increase in funding.
If the storm surge comes up the ship channel, that's a nightmare.
There's an acceptance at cons that you don't get elsewhere. No judgment, and it's beautiful.
I'm Craig Cohen. Join us for the next Houston Matters, weekday mornings at 9 here on News 88.7.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, enjoy a double feature of Lucy Worsley Investigates. At 8, look at the gunpowder plot of 1805. Followed at 9 with the madness of King George. Tonight on TV8 or stream on the PBS app. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Decamera. The 25-26 season features a Schubert Perspectives series, jazz with Branford Marsalis and Pat Metheny, and much more. Information and tickets at decamera.com. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider striving to build trust with businesses across the state through dedicated services. More at texasmutual.com/TexansDeliver. Support for Houston Public Media comes from UT Health Houston, home to Dr. Mary Aitken, who is focused on keeping children safe from preventable injuries through research, education, and advocacy. More at uth.edu/manyfaces.
And now back to Hello Houston. Call now, 713-440-8870, or email us at talk@hellohouston.org to get your comment in on today's topics. Here's Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
For a decade, the nonprofit organization Freewheels Houston has worked to repair donated bicycles and give them new life. Volunteers repair the donated bikes, and upon completion, the organization distributes them to individuals in need, including refugees, veterans emerging from homelessness, and young people with low-income families. And joining us now to tell us more about Freewheels Houston and what they're doing is its founder, Bill Mintz. Bill, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thanks, Celeste. Thanks, all of you. It's really good to be here. It's really good to be able to talk about Freewheels in 10 years.
Yeah, so 10 years. Congratulations. What was going on 10 years ago that you felt that there was a need for this?
Well, I was about a year into retirement, and I was doing 2 things. I was doing bicycle advocacy, and I was volunteering at a refugee resettlement agency. And a friend of mine in the refugee resettlement sector said, Refugees love bicycles. We give people mobility. That's what we do. People arrive, our customers arrive in Houston with almost nothing but a will to work and support their families. We give them a way to get to school, to get to work, to a warehouse job. There's a lot of employers in Houston, very kind businessmen who will tell somebody, I want to give you a job. How are you going to get here on time? And they don't have a car. AAA estimates it costs $1,000 a month to own and operate a car in Houston.
Wow.
And Metro doesn't always meet their needs.
Sure.
You know, we've given bikes to people whose shift is ended at 2:00 in the morning, which is 2 hours after the last bus. But if you give people a bike, they can get where they need to be when they need to be there.
And about how many bikes are y'all currently giving away?
Well, we've given away more than 3,000 over 10 years.
Wow.
That's
I mean,
fantastic.
we started in the parking lot of my church and in my garage. And then we moved into storage units, and we've been in warehouse space in the Gulfton area since 2017. And we give bikes to, last year we gave bikes to about 700 people. We're running about 60 a month right now.
And a lot of these bikes are bikes that people have used and give them to you to refurbish.
Yes. The bikes are, yes. If you Google, where can I donate a bike near me? We show up at the top of the search results page.
Yeah.
So every Friday and Saturday morning at our warehouse, our shop in Gulfton, people show up with bikes in the back of their pickup, with bikes in the back seat of their car, and say, we're not riding this anymore. Can you guys use it?
Will you take a bike in any condition? I mean,
Yes.
like if the tires are flat, the chain is broken, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, we have partners who will take some of the bikes off our hands, but we repair most of the bikes we get. We fix flats, we replace chains, we tune them up. We have a checklist so that we all agree on what it takes to make a bike safe and reliable. And it gets, we put a lot of people to work. We had 500 people volunteer last year. Most of them don't know how to repair a bike, but they can clean one, and we can teach them how to fix a flat. And so they'll do that, and then we have a growing core, fortunately, of people who know how to repair bikes. They know how to tune them up. They know how to true the wheels. They know how to work on the bottom brackets, replace some bearings, and get them ready to go. And then we double-check them, and then we give them away.
So it's true recycle.
Yes.
Yes. We had a comment on YouTube that came in and said, I would imagine that this organization must have an amazing parts bin. Do you sell used parts to help fund your organization?
Not usually. We try to keep everything within our system. We spend almost nothing on parts.
Why is that?
Because we make them work. We repair them, or if a bike comes in and it's too much of a hunk of rust to repair, we'll harvest the parts. We'll harvest the derailleurs and the sprockets and the bottom, and the parts, the brakes. We'll harvest that and put them to work ourselves. And frankly, I don't want to spend a lot of time selling stuff. I want to spend time
Right, I get
fixing bikes and giving them to people.
So tell us, what's your biggest challenge in this? Maybe we can help you figure it out.
Well, we get bikes every week. We have lots of customers. We have a great volunteer who's managing our list right now, and she's keeping us really on point, on goal. I worked before I retired, I worked for an oil company, and goals are really important. Yeah. And so we have one goal: fixing bikes, and giving them two goals: fixing bikes, giving them to people.
What I think is so important about why we're actually doing this and having you on is to remind people bikes are not just there as an enjoyment, as a recreation. This is the lifeblood of many people to be able to function in today's society, to be able to get where they need to go, and that a lot of people are cut off from any form of transportation.
Yes. We met a young man earlier this year who's an Afghan who was headed towards medical school in Afghanistan. And, you know, his family was associated, his dad was associated with the U.S., and they had to leave. And so they got here, and he wanted to work and go to school and advance his goal of working in the medical industry. And he lined up an interview with a company that was really on point, really would help him on this. But it was in Sugar Land. Mm-hmm. And Sugar Land doesn't have bus service. Mm-hmm. So he didn't have a way even to get to the interview. And then we gave him a bike. He found a job in the medical center. He's taking classes at Houston Community College, and he's back on track to achieve his lifelong goal of having a career in the medical business.
Okay. All right, how do we get involved real quick?
Well, volunteer.
Yeah, what's the website?
Okay, our website is freewheelshouston.org. I also want to plug Volunteer Houston, which is a platform managed by Interfaith Ministries, I Am Houston. Sure. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they have like 140,000 people registered looking for volunteer opportunities. Yep. And like I said, we had almost 500 people volunteer last year, and it's great. So you can give us a bike, you can volunteer. We're at freewheelshouston.org, or you can go to volunteerhouston.org and you can register for our work days on Friday and Saturday, and we'll put you to work. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, you will work.
For a great
We
cause.
had a couple comments come in more on YouTube. One, Skippy the Tube Rat writes, bikes can be a lifesaver. My truck broke down in the late zeros, and I couldn't afford to fix it. I started riding my bike to work until I could fix the truck. I was doing 40 miles a day. And my British computer guy writes, a bike helped me hold down my first ever job. It was gifted to me. This program is awesome. Thank you for all that you do.
Well, that's great to hear. And I want people to think about that when they see somebody pedaling down the street. It's not, for a lot of the people who ride in this town, it's not recreation, it's essential.
Bill Mintz is the founder of the area nonprofit Freewheels Houston. Bill, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you very much. Come on out on a Saturday and
we'll be
help us clean some bikes.
Thanks.
It's one thing to love public radio, but it's a special thing to support it. Consider this. If you've got a car you don't need anymore, or you've got one that's simply too expensive to repair, you can arrange to donate it to Houston Public Media. We take any kind of vehicle in any condition. It's easy for you, pickup is free, and it could be worth hundreds of dollars in support. Visit HoustonPublicMedia.org/cars to learn more. And thanks.
I'm Jesse Thorne. You want some real, insightful conversations about where art comes from? Well, Bullseye has you covered, as long as you don't mind a little bit of ridiculousness.
Y'all was like really judging me though.
They sniffed it out. They sniffed out that I was weird.
I was like, I don't know where I'm gonna sit, just like in the movies.
Listen, learn, laugh. Bullseye from Maximum Fun and NPR.
Bullseye, Thursdays at 9 p.m. on News 88.7.
And now back to Hello Houston. Call now, 713-440-8870, or email us at talk@hellohouston.org to get your comment in on today's topics. Here's Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
You know, so much goes on in the city all the time. And with Frank gone, Celeste and I had to find ways to keep busy.
I bet.
And what we found ourselves doing was we've been to a bit of theater. And for you, Celeste, it's been kind of a revelation what you've been seeing out there.
It has been absolutely incredible. You know, everybody talks about how Houston has a great theater scene.
Yep.
But I was able to I went to the Tamari Cooper show.
Yeah.
That was phenomenal. And then I was at the Alley Theater and I saw when the mirror cracked.
Mirror cracked, yeah.
And that is Houston theater. That is the Houston theater scene and the talent and the local artistry that is on display. Incredible.
What I love about what you saw, too, is you saw two different ends of the spectrum.
Yes.
And you saw how good and the quality is so high of what we put out there as a community when it comes to theater. So Tamari Cooper Show being a local, nonprofit theater company doing something you could say avant-garde at the Catastrophic. And then you go to the Alley, which gives you professionally tight, Broadway caliber dramatic performance. Or I don't want to say dramatic, but plays, because they can be comedic and they can be dramatic.
Well, the one I saw was drama and it was dramatic. And it was amazing.
Well, for people who want more theater in their lives, have we got news for you. Houston Theater Week started yesterday, offering buy one, get one free ticket deals on nearly 400 shows that are in the upcoming 25-26 theater season. And it's really exciting. This is the most they have offered in the 4 years of Houston Theater Week. The week-long event gives Houstonians discount access to 21 different organizations, from major venues like the Hobby Center to community groups like Kinetic Ensemble, showcasing theater, opera, dance, music, and more across the city. It's just wonderful.
Where do I go to get this deal?
Well, you know what you can do. I don't know. On here, I've got the code when you buy, but I'm not sure if you go to each one. The code to use, and I'm looking quickly at what I have in front of me. The code to use is HTW25 when you buy tickets until midnight on Sunday. And that gives you the 2-for-1 offer. But I'm not sure if you can do that at each theater or if you do it at a particular website. We'll look into that while we're chit-chatting here. But
I guess when you go to buy the ticket, HTW for Houston Theater Week?
25. Yeah, for this season. Just a little side note, last year Theater Weeks garnered nearly $1.4 million in revenue and more than 32,000 tickets sold. I'm going to look it up and see where in the world.
And I really do implore you to go see a show, take advantage of this opportunity to get that special. What is it? Or you buy a ticket and you
get one free.
Buy one, get one free. I mean,
it's more fun to go with people.
It is a lot of fun to go with people, but also when you do something like that, then you have a little extra spending money to maybe grab a treat before, maybe go to dinner.
Figure out a different way to spend your money. But just spend it.
Exactly. But, now we're going to take you to sports.
Hold one second before you go there. Go to visithoustontexas.com or just Google Houston Theater Weeks. They have a list of the participating organizations, and I do believe when you go into their individual places to buy, at the bottom of the page, you can shop all offers. So it's all there. And remember, the code is Houston Theater Week, HTW25.
HTW25.
And okay, so now I'm taking you. We're going to sports, calling Houston FIFA World Cup Volunteers. So the first game that's going to be played for the World Cup here in Houston is June 14th, 2026. And the volunteer application for FIFA World Cup is now open. So this is your chance to be part of a historic global event right here in our city. Houston, again, will host 7 matches at the FIFA World Cup 2026, including 2 games in the knockout phase. Some of those volunteer roles include you can host city ambassador, fan festival support, broadcast services, hospitality and ceremonies, and many, many more. And that's a really great and cool opportunity to help your city and its sports and to be a part of such a cool event. And
it's going to be amazing.
Thousands. I think they're going to need thousands of volunteers.
Houston has a way of pulling these kind of things off. So.
And we do. And you can go to FIFA.com, tournaments, World Cup, Canada, Mexico, USA 2026/volunteers. Just go to the FIFA website and you'll see it. But that's like anyway. But that's a really great opportunity if you want to be involved. It's going to be tight for tickets. So.
Speaking of sports, they've got a lot of new food coming to NRG.
I'm excited about this.
Fluffy tacos. I know.
They have a new menu and it's got new foods.
I know, it's fried flatbread. Say that 3 times. Fried flatbread.
You
Fried
can't even
flatbread,
say it
fried
once.
flatbread.
Okay, Frank. So when you go to a sports game, do you want fancy food or do you just want a good old hot dog?
Nachos, hot dogs,
Do
popcorn.
they have crawfish queso? That sounds good. Hot honey chicken funnel cake fries.
Maybe. I mean, I would do what is it? Repeat that, what you just said.
Hot honey chicken funnel cake fries.
Say it 5 more times.
And I'm going to jump in here. Today
he's dying to say this.
He's dying.
Today is National Soft Ice Cream Day.
No.
And soft ice cream came about when Tom Carvelis was driving a truck full of ice cream, and his truck broke down and it started to melt. And he and his wife were like, what are we going to do? We're going to lose all our money. Sell the soft ice cream. They started selling it out of the truck. Eventually, that truck became Carvel's Ice Cream. It became a big chain on the East Coast, across the country, and it invented soft ice cream.
Wow.
And Tom Carvelis was a friend of my grandfather's.
I was just going to say, but how do you know Tom Carvelis?
He was, and it's Carvel's. Tom
Carvel's.
Yeah, and he used to always say, Fudgy the Whale. You can get a Fudgy the Whale cake at Carvel's.
There you go.
There you go. There's your culture for the day. But anyway, go out, celebrate. Have some soft ice cream today.
And that, you know what the time is?
What time is it?
It's the end of our show. It is.
Let's do another hour on the Houston Astros and the Houston Texans.
Let's not give anybody any ideas. Okay, we want to thank you for listening to Hello Houston. Truly. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversations. We will be talking with Harris County Commissioner for Precinct 4, Leslie Briones. Thanks for joining us today during your midday. This is News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from GenPro, a Houston-based home generator service providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity